Right. So we talked about communities of practice. So here are a few things highlighted from the Brazil workshop. So 3 elements for an effective or successful community of practice. The first one talks about people sharing the same discourse or the same language, so the jargon or the lingo of the field, the professional jargon, let's say, of the field, and the concepts that are key to understanding it. So we have many in education, we have many in English language teaching. I put a few examples here, like when we talk about active learning, maybe if you talk about active learning with someone from a completely different field, they are not going to be very sure about what it means. Or if you talked about interlanguage to someone who hasn't studied linguistics, applied linguistics, or English teaching or language teaching, they might not know what you're talking about, etc. So the common discourse is important in a community of practice because it can develop from this shared repertoire of language and of practice as well. Yeah. Then we have obviously shared goals. If people members of a community work towards common goals, this is going to go forward better or faster. Some examples of things that could be done in a community of practice: materials design, for example, and curriculum development, peer observation, and so on and so forth. And then cooperation and engagement. So here we also talk about what is one's role in a community of practice. This doesn't have to be fixed. It can change according to the activities that are going to be done and to the goals of the moment. So let's suppose that we are together designing some observation instruments, for example, and then at this point my role might be just to coordinate the activity. Someone else may take on the role of revising the instruments, another person of collecting the instruments and sharing them in the community, etc. And then when we in the future we have different or varied goals, then the roles will may also change. So it's important to understand that at some point in the community of practice, a person will only be observing, and then maybe at some other they are going to be more active. So this is an interesting thing to pay attention to regarding one's role in a community of practice. Then we talked about, we talked about as well that a community of practice needs to be organic. It cannot be, for example, a school leader, let's say a supervisor or coordinator, telling the teachers, okay, now you are part of a community of practice. That rarely works, I think. It has to be organic in the sense that people would join the community because they want to join, because they see they can offer something to the community and they can see they can get something from it. So very formal and how to call it, institutionalized, let's say it, communities of practice tend not to develop so well because of this engagement is kind of forced and not natural. So this is something that also came up from this. Right, so we would like to know a lot more from you guys attending the webinar. What do you expect? What do you want from a community of practice? You can also share examples of successful communities of practice you've taken part of.
Once again, if you'd like to speak about this rather than use the chat room, then let us know, and we'll give you permission to use the microphone. While we're waiting for people to respond, Willy, again, what about you and your experience of COPs or communities of practice? Are there any in particular which you feel have worked very well that
For
you feel?
me, yeah, I think it worked well when about, I don't know, 10 years ago, when I started connecting with other teachers on social media channels, social networks. I think that's the most open and flexible kind of community of practice. There's no, it's it's never top down in a way, if you know what I mean. So I think that worked very well. I really enjoyed it. And then I tried like having little forums and communities, so to speak, in courses. That didn't work very well. It didn't. It felt like we were learning from each other, but not that we were part of a community. Um, I think a community of practice works well when there is space for also sharing personal things and talking about other things other than the goal of the community. So the goal of the communities of practice I've joined were always better teaching, teaching quality, sharing things that could get us to teach better. But we also talked about music, cinema, etc., jokes and memes and things like that are totally unrelated to it. And that, I think, gave us a strong sense of community at the time.
Great. That's really interesting to hear. Susan Reyes in Peru would like the microphone. Susan, you've got 2 accounts, so I'm going to try one, and if that doesn't work, I'll try the other one. So you should be able to speak now, Susan. Oh, no, the other one's a... Oh, there we go.
Now, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep. Hello,
Hi,
Graham. Hello,
how are you?
Willy. So yeah, about myself, what will I expect from my community of practice? Apart from sharing interests, I think I would like to expect like support of the development of new skills, but also knowledge, and to learn from each other innovative practices. For example, in Peru, I know like the Ministry of Education, I think they are here also in the webinar. They are looking for support for their English teachers, but not just English skills, but also sharing good practices and also discover new digital means. So basically, it's what I will expect, and I think what they also expect from ministry side.
Very interesting. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think the idea of people joining community practice for support is typical, and I think this concept of community of practice has become popular recently. I see it everywhere. I see lots of people talking about them. It's kind of interesting what Willy, you said earlier about it being organic. I think is true. Really, a community of practice sort of usually isn't top down. It's sort of bottom up. It's led by the members. It's self-organizing. However, if you are in a position, as you've just explained, Susan, if you work for Ministry of Education and you're interested in trying to foster a community of practice, then you can do it. And you do need to have people who are willing to start. So having sort of champions, if you like, on a particular subject who are posting questions and ideas and sharing and trying to encourage that with the other members is often a very good way of getting things going.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So you wouldn't, while in a course you would have teachers or instructors, let's say, and course designers, in a community of practice you would have curators or moderators or promoters of stuff. And that could be assigned initially to someone. So for example, in our community of practice on CPDB community of practice, Graham and I are mainly the ones who are feeding the the community with articles and research, etc. Obviously, other people have done so, but we are trying to kickstart the discussions. But ultimately, if the people don't join the discussions or start to share as well, there can't be two people always feeding the community. Otherwise, it will become I don't know, an online course or a bank of resources or something that is not done by the people, by the members. So I think that's the main difference here.
Definitely, I agree, Willy. One of the interesting things about belonging to a community of practice that I find very rich and rewarding is the ability to be in touch with a whole number of experts and people who are doing the same, have a shared interest in our case, who are in education in the Americas, for example, and the ability to ask a question of those people who may be able to answer very quickly. So the ability to have that kind of response when you need it and get knowledge and examples of experience for people very quickly is very difficult to do in any other way. It's not something you can just search for in Google and find very easily. So actually having that ability to do so is important. However, in a community, usually people only do that, only respond. There has to be a kind of toing and froing. There has to be this communication established beforehand. Otherwise, if people just go to the community to ask and they don't go to the community to share, then the response is normally not as good as if when you have a community of practice where people are actually sharing quite a lot anyway. And so the response to the questions that are asked are much better, I think.
Right, absolutely. Great. Okay, so would anyone else like to share an experience or answer any of the questions here that we have on the screen about community of practice before we move on to the next theme?